What, our envelopes? Hello, Jones, where are you going? Can't stop, Robinson. I'm hastening to purchase the only reliable ink eraser, Cancel, sold by Helly's Ltd. at 85th Dame Street. Well, out of that ruck I am. Devil a job it was, collecting accounts on those convents. Tranquilla Convent. That was a nice nun there, really sweet face. Wimple suited her small head. Sister? Sister? I am sure she was crossed in love by her eyes. Very hard to bargain with that sort of woman. I disturbed her at her devotions that morning, but glad to communicate with the outside world. Our great day, she said, feast of Our Lady on Mount Carmel. Sweet name, too, Caramel. She knew I think she knew by the way If she had married, she would have changed. I suppose they really were short of money. Fried everything in their best butter all the time. No lard for them. My heart's broke, eating dripping. They like buttering themselves in and out. Molly tasting it, her veil up. Sister? Pat Claffey, the pawnbroker's daughter. It was a nun, they say, invented barbed wire. He crossed Westmoreland Street when apostrophe S had plodded by. Rover Cycle Shop. Those races are on today. How long ago was that? Year Phil Gilligan died. We were in Lombard Street West. Wait, wasn't Tom's. Got the job in Wisdom Helly's year we married. 6 years, 10 years ago. 94, he died, yes. That's right, the big fire Darnauts. Val Dillon was Lord Mayor. The Glen Creed dinner. Alderman Robert O'Reilly, emptying the port into his soup before the flag fell. Bob lapping it for the inner alderman. Couldn't hear what the band played, for what we have already received may the Lord make us. Millie was a kiddie then. Molly had an elephant-gray dress with the braided frogs. Man-tailored with self-covered buttons. She didn't like it because I sprained my ankle first day she wore choir picnic at the Sugarloaf. As if that, old Goodwin's tall hat done up with some sticky stuff, flies picnic too. Never put a dress on her back like it. Fitted her like a glove, shoulders and hips. Just beginning to plump it out well. Rabbit pie we had that day. People looking after her. Happier then. Snug little room that was, with the red wallpaper. Dockrells, 1 and 9 pence a dozen. Millie's tubbing night. American soap I bought. Elderflower. Cozy smell of her bathwater. Funny how she looked, soaped all over. Shapely too. Now photography. Poor Papa's daguerreotype atelier, he told me. Hereditary taste. He walked along the curbstone. Stream of life. What was the name of that priesty-looking chap who always squinting in when he passed? Weak eyes, woman. Stopped in Citroen's St. Kevin's Parade. Penn something. Pendennis? My memory is getting... Penn? Of course it's years ago. Noise of the trams, probably. Well, if he couldn't remember the Dayfather's name that he sees every day. Bartell Darcy was the tenor, just coming out then, seeing her home after practice. Conceited fellow, with his waxed-up mustache, gave her that song, Winds That Blow from the South. Windy night that was. When I went to fetch her, there was that lodge meeting on about those lottery tickets after Goodwin's concert in the super room or oak room of the mansion house. He and I behind, sheet of her music blew out of my hand against the high school railings. Lucky it didn't. Things like that spoil the effect of a night for her. Professor Goodwin, linking her in front, shaky on his pens, poor old sot. His farewell concerts, positively last appearance on any stage. Maybe for months, and maybe never. Remember her laughing at the wind, her blizzard collar up. Corner of Harcourt Road, remember that gust? Blew up all her skirts, and her boa nearly smothered old Goodwin. She did get flushed in the wind. Remember when we got home, raking up the fire and frying up those pieces of lap of mutton for her supper with the chutney sauce she liked? And the mulled rum. Could see her in the bedroom from the hearth, unclamping the busk of her stays, white. Swish, and her soft flop she stays made on the bed. Always warm from her, always liked to let herself out, sitting thereafter till near 2, taking out her hairpins. Millie tucked up in Betty house, happy. Oh, that was the night. Oh, Mr. Bloom, how do you do? Oh, how do you do, Miss Breen? No use complaining. How was Molly those times? Haven't seen her for ages. In the pink, Mr. Bloom said gaily. Millie has a position down in Mullingar, you know. Go away. Isn't that grand for her? Yes, and a photographer's there. Getting on like a house on fire. How are all your charges? All in the baker's list, Miss Breen said. How many has she? No other in sight. You're in black, I see. You have no... No, Mr. Bloom said. I've just come from a funeral. Going to crop up all day, I foresee. Who's dead? When and what did he die of? Turn up like a bad penny. Oh, dear me, Miss Breen said. I hope it wasn't any near relation. May as well get her sympathy. Dignam, Mr. Bloom said. An old friend of mine. He died quite suddenly, poor fellow. Heart trouble, I believe. Funeral was this morning. Your funeral's tomorrow, while you're coming through the rye. Diddle diddle dum dum, diddle diddle. Sad to lose old friends, Miss Breen's woman eyes said melancholily. Now that's quite enough about that. Just quietly, husband. And your lord and master? Miss Breen turned up her two large eyes. Hasn't lost them anyhow. Oh, don't be talking, she said. He's a caution to rattlesnakes. He's in there now with his law books, finding out the law of libel. He has me hard scalded. Wait till I show you. Hot mock turtle vapor and steam of new-baked jam puffs roly-poly poured out from Harrison's. The heavy noon reek tickled the top of Mr. Bloom's gullet. Want to make good pastry, butter, best flour, demerara sugar, or they'd taste it with the hot tea. Or is it from her? A barefoot Arab stood over the grating, breathing in the fumes. Dead in the gnaw of hunger that way. Pleasure or pain, is it? Penny dinner. Knife and fork chained to the table. Opening her handbag, chipped leather, hat pin, ought to have a guard on those things. Stick it with a chap's eye in the tram. Rummaging, open, money. Please take one. Devils if they lose 6 pence, raise Cain. Husband barging, where's the 10 shillings I gave you on Monday? Are you feeding your little brother's family? Soiled handkerchief, medicine bottle, pastille, that was fell. What is she? There must be a new moon out, she said. He's always bad then. Do you know what he did last night? Her hands ceased to rummage. Her eyes fixed themselves on him, wide in alarm, yet smiling. What? Mr. Bloom asked. Let her speak. Look straight in her eyes. I believe you. Trust me. Woke me up in the night, she said. Dream he had. A nightmare. Indiges. Said the ace of spades was walking up the stairs. The ace of spades, Mr. Bloom said. She took a folded postcard from her handbag. Read that, she said. He got it this morning. What is it? Mr. Bloom asked, taking the card. UP? UP. Up, she said. Someone taking a rise out of him. It's a great shame for them, whoever he is. Indeed it is, Mr. Bloom said. She took back the card, sighing. And now he's going round to Mr. Minton's office. He's going to take an action for £10,000, he says. She folded the card into her untidy bag and snapped the catch. Same blue serge dress she had 2 years ago, the nap bleaching, seen its best days. Wispish hair over her ears, and that dowdy toque. 3 old grapes to take the harm out of it. Shabby genteel, she used to be a tasty dresser. Lines round her mouth, only a year or so older than Molly. See the eye that woman gave her, passing? Cruel, the unfair sex. He looked still at her, holding back behind his look his discontent. Pungent mock turtle, oxtail, mulligatawny. I'm hungry, too. Flakes of pastry on the gusset of her dress, daub of sugary flowers stuck to her cheek, rhubarb tart with liberal fillings, rich fruit interior. Josie Powell, that was, in Luke Doyle's long ago. Dolphin's Barn, the charades. UP. Up. Change the subject. Do you ever see anything of Miss Beaufoy? Mr. Bloom asked. Mina Purefoy, she said. Philip Beaufoy, I was thinking. Playgoers Club. Matcham often thinks of the master stroke. Did I pull the chain? Yes, the last act. Yes. I just called to ask on the way. In, is she over it? She's in the lying-in hospital at Hollis Street. Dr. Horn got her in. She's 3 days bad now. Oh, Mr. Bloom said. I'm sorry to hear that. Yes, Miss Breen said, and a house full of kids at home. It's a very stiff birth, the nurse told me. Oh, Mr. Bloom said. His heavy, pitying gaze absorbed her news. His tongue clacked in compassion. I'm sorry to hear that, he said. Poor thing. 3 days. Well, that's terrible for her. Miss Breen nodded. She was taken bad on the Tuesday. Mr. Bloom touched her funny bone gently, warning her. Mind, let this man pass. A bony form strode along the curbstone from the river, staring with a rapt gaze into the sunlight through a heavy stringed glass. Tight as a skull piece, a tiny hat gripped his head. From his arm, a folded dust coat, a stick, and an umbrella dangled to his stride. Watch him, Mr. Bloom says. He always walks outside the lampposts. Watch. Who is he, if it's a fair question? Miss Breen asked. Is he Dotty? His name is Cashel Boyle O'Connell Fitzmaurice Tisdall Farrell, Mr. Bloom said, smiling. Watch. He has enough of them, she said. Dennis will be like that one of these days. She broke off suddenly. There he is, she said. I must go after him. Goodbye. Remember me to Molly, won't you? I will, Mr. Bloom said. He watched her dodge through passers towards the shop fronts. Dennis Breen in skimpy frock coat and blue canvas shoes shuffled out of Harrison's hugging 2 heavy tomes to his ribs. Blown in from the bay, like old times, he suffered her to overtake him without surprise and thrust his dull gray beard towards her, his loose jaw wagging as he spoke earnestly. Meshuggah, office chump. Mr. Bloom walked on again easily, seeing ahead of him in sunlight the tight skull piece, the dangling, stick umbrella dust coat. Going the 2 days. Watch him. Out he goes again. One way of getting on in the world, and that other old mosey lunatic and those duds. Hard time she must have with him. U.P. Up. I'll take my oath. That's Alf Bergen or Richie Golding. Wrote it for a lark in the Scotch House, I bet anything. Round to Minton's office, his oyster eyes staring at the postcard. Be a feast for the gods. He passed the Irish Times. There might be other answers lying there. Like to answer them all. Good system for criminals. Code. At their lunch now. Clerk with the glasses there doesn't know me. Oh, leave them there to simmer. Enough bother wading through 44 of them. Wanted. Smart lady typist to aid gentlemen in literary work. I called you naughty darling because I do not like that other world. Please tell me what is the meaning. Please tell me what perfume does your wife. Tell me who made the world. The way they sprig those questions on you. And the other one, Lizzie Twigg. My literary efforts have had the good fortune to meet with the approval of the eminent poet, A.E., Mr. G.O. Russell. No time to do her hair, drinking sloppy tea with a book of poetry. Best paper by long chalks for a small ad. Got the provinces now. Cook and general. Example cuisine. Housemaid kept. Wanted live man for spirit counter. Resp girl. R.C. Wishes to hear of post in fruit or pork shop. James Carlyle made that. 6.5% dividend. Made a big deal on coach shares. Kilkenny. Cunning old Scotch hunks. All the toady news. Our gracious and popular vicereign. Bought the Irish Field now. Lady Mountcashel is quite recovered after her confinement and rode out with the Ward Union staghounds at the enlargement yesterday at Rathof. Uneatable fox. Pot hunters, too. Fear injects juices, make it tender enough for them. Riding astride, sit her horse like a man. Weight-carrying huntress, no side saddle or pillion for her, not for Joe. First to the meet and in at the death. Strong as a broodmare, some of those horsey women. Swagger around livery stables, toss off a glass of brandy neat while you'd say knife. That one at the Grosvenor this morning, up with her on the car. Wish, wish. Stonewall or 5-barred gate put her mount to it. Think that pug-nosed driver did it out of spite. Who is this, she was like? Oh yes, Miss Miriam Dendrade. That sold me her old wraps and black underclothes in the Shelburne Hotel. Divorced Spanish-American. Didn't take a feather out of her, my handling them. As if I was her clothes horse. Saw her in the vice-regal party when Stubbs the park ranger got me with Whalen of the Express. Scavenging what the quality left. High tea, mayonnaise I poured on the plums, thinking it was custard. Her ears ought to have tingled for a few weeks after. Want to be a bull for her? Born courtesan? No nursery work for her, thanks. Poor Miss Purefoy, Methodist husband, method in his madness. Saffron bun and milk and soda lunch in the educational diary. YMCA, eating with a stopwatch, 32 chews a minute. And still his mutton chop whiskers grew. Supposed to be well connected. Theodore's cousin in Dublin Castle. One Tony relative in every family. Hardy annuals he presents her with. Saw him out at the Three Jolly Toppers, marching along bareheaded. And his eldest boy carrying one in a market net. The squallers, poor thing. Then having to give the breast year after year, all rounds of the night. Selfish those TTs are. Dog in the manger. Only 1 lump of sugar in my tea, if you please. He stood at Fleet Street, crossing. Luncheon interval. A 6-penny at Rose. Must look up that ad in the National Library. An 8-penny in the Burton. Better, on my way. He walked on past Bolton's Westmoreland house. Tea. I forgot to tap Tom Kernan. 3 days, imagine groaning on a bed with a vine-geared handkerchief round her forehead, her belly swollen out. Phew. Dreadful, simply. Child's head too big, forceps. Doubled up inside her, trying to butt its way out blindly, groping for the way out. Kill me, that would. Lucky Molly got over hers lightly. They ought to invent something to stop that. Life with hard labor. Twilight sleep idea. Queen Victoria was given that. 9 she had. A good lair. Old woman that lived in a shoe had so many children. Suppose he was consumptive. Time someone thought about instead of gassing about the what was it the pensive bosom of the silver effulgence? Flapdoodle to feed fools on. They could easily have big establishments, whole thing quite painless, out of all the taxes, give every child born 5 quid at compound interest, up to 21.5% is 100 shillings, and 5 tiresome pounds multiplied by 20 decimal. System encourage people to put by money, save 110, and a bit 21 years want to work it out on paper, come to a tidy sum more than you think. Not stillborn, of course. They are not even registered, trouble for nothing. Funny sight, 2 of them together, their bellies out. Molly and Miss Moisel. Mother's meeting. Phthisius retires for the time being, then returns. How flat they look all of a sudden after. Peaceful eyes, weight off their mind. Old Miss Thornton was a jolly old soul. All my babies, she said, the spoon of pap in her mouth before she fed them. Oh, that's yum-yum. Got her hand crushed by old Tom Wall's son, his first bow to the public, head like a prize pumpkin. Snuffy, Dr. Murrin. People knocking 'em up at all hours. For God's sake, doctor, wife in her throes, then keep them waiting months for their fee. To attendance on your wife, no gratitude in people. Humane doctors, most of 'em. Before the huge, high door of the Irish House of Parliament, a flock of pigeons flew. Their little frolic after meals. Who will we do it on? I picked the fellow in black. Here goes. Here's good luck. Must be thrilling from the air. Apjohn myself and Owen Goldberg up in the trees near Goose Green playing the monkeys. Mackerel, they called me. A squad of constables, debauched from College Street, marching in Indian file, goose step, foot-heated faces, sweating helmets, patting their truncheons. After their feed with a good load of fat soup under their belts, policeman's lot is off the happy one. They split up in groups and scattered, saluting, towards their beats, let out to graze. Best moment to attack, one in pudding time. A punch in his dinner, a squad of others, marching irregularly, rounded Trinity railings, making for the station. Bound for their troughs, prepared to receive cavalry, prepared to receive soup. He crossed under Tommy Moore's roguish finger. They did right to put him up over the urinal. Meeting of the waters, ought to be places for women, running into cake shops, settle my hat straight. There is not in this wide world a valet. Great song of Julia Morgan's. Keep her voice up to the very last, pupil of Michael Balfour's, wasn't she? He gazed after the last broad tunic. Nasty customers to tackle. Jack Power could a tale unfold. Father a G-man. If a fellow gave them trouble being lagged, they let him have it hot and heavy in the bridewell. Can't blame 'em after all, with the job they have, especially the young hornies. That horse policeman, the day Joe Chamberlain was given his degree in Trinity, he got a run for his money. My word, he did. His horse's hooves clattering after us down Abbey Street. Lucky I had the presence of mind to dive into Manning's or I was souped. He did come a wallop, by George. Must have cracked his skull on the cobblestones. I oughtn't to have got myself swept along with those medicals and the Trinity jibs and their mortarboards, looking for trouble. Still, I gotta know that young Dixon who dressed that sting for me in the Mater. And now he's in Hollis Street with Miss Purefoy. Wheels within wheels, police whistle in my ears still. All skedaddled. Why he fixed on me, give me in charge, right here it began. Up the Boers, 3 cheers for the vet. We'll hang Joe Chamberlain on a sour apple tree. Silly billies, mob of young cubs yelling their guts out. Vinegar Hill, the Butter Exchange Band. Few years' time, half of 'em magistrates and civil servants. War comes on, into the army, helter-skelter, same fellows used to, whether on the scaffold high. Never know who you're talking to. Corny Kelliger has the Harvey Duff in his eye. Like that Peter or Dennis or James Carey that blew the gaff on the Invincibles. Member of the corporation, too, egging raw youths on to get in the know, all the time drawing Secret Service pay from the castle. Drop him like a hot potato. Why, those plainclothes men are always courting slavies. Easy twig a man used a uniform. Square pushing up against the back door, maul her a bit, then the next thing on the menu. And who is the gentleman does be visiting there? Was the young master saying anything? Peeping Tom through the keyhole, decoy duck, hot-blooded young student fooling around her fat arms ironing. Are those yours, Mary? I don't wear such things. Stop, or I'll tell the missus on you. Out half the night. There are great times coming, Mary. Wait till you see. Ah, go along with your great times coming. Barmaids, too, tobacco shop girls. James Steffen's idea was the best. He knew them. Circles of 10 so that a fellow couldn't round on more than his own ring. Sin fine. Back out, you get the knife. Hidden hand, stay in. The firing squad. Turnkey's daughter got him out of Richmond, off from Lusk. Putting up in the Buckingham Palace Hotel under their very noses, Garibaldi. You must have a certain fascination, Parnell. Arthur Griffith is a square-headed fellow, but he has a no-go in him for the mob. Or gas about our lovely land, gammon and spinach, Dublin Bakery Company's tea room, debating societies, that republicanism is the best form of government, that the language question should take precedence of the economic question. Have your daughters inveigling them to your house? Stuff them up with meat and drink? Michaelmas goose, here's a good lump of thyme seasoning under the apron for you. Have another quart of goose grease before it gets too cold. Half enthusiast, penny roll, and a walk with the band. No grace for the carver. The thought that the other chap pays best sauce in the world makes themselves thoroughly at home. Show us over those apricots, meaning peaches. The not far distant day. Home rule, sun rising up in the northwest. His smile faded as he walked, a heavy cloud hiding the sun slowly, shadowing Trinity's surly front. Trams passed one another, ingoing, outgoing, clanging, useless words. Things go on same, day after day, squads of police marching out, back, trams in, out. Those two loonies mooching about. Dignam carted off. Mina Purefoy, swollen belly on a bed, groaning to have a child tugged out of her. One born every second somewhere, other dying every second. Since I fed the birds 5 minutes, 300 babies kicked the bucket, other 300 were born, washing the blood off. All are washed in the blood of the lamb, bawling, meh. Cityful passing away, other cityful coming. Passing away, too. Other coming on, passing on. Houses, lines of houses, streets, miles of pavement, piled up bricks, stones. Changing hands, this owner, that. Landlord never dies, they say. Others steps into his shoes when he gets his notice to quit. They buy the place up with gold, and still they have all the gold. Swindle it in somewhere, piled up in cities, worn away age after age, pyramids in sand, built on bread and onions, slaves, Chinese wall, Babylon, big stones left, round towers, rest rubble, sprawling suburbs, jerry built, Kerwin's mushroom houses built of breeze, shelter for the night. No one is anything. This is the very worst hour of the day. Vitality, dull, gloomy, hate this hour. Feel as if I'd been eaten and spewed. Provost's house, the Reverend Dr. Salmon, 10 salmon. Well, tend in there, like a mortuary chapel. Wouldn't live in it if they paid me. Hope they have liver and bacon today. Nature abhors a vacuum. The sun freed itself slowly and lit glints of light among the silverware opposite in Walter Sexton's window, by which John Howard Parnell passed unseeing. There he is, the brother. Image of him, haunting face. Now that's a coincidence. Course, hundreds of times you think of a person and don't meet him. Like a man walking in his sleep. No one knows him. Must be a corporation meeting today. They say he never put on the city marshal's uniform since he got the job. Charlie Kavanaugh used to come out on his high horse, cocked hat, puffed, powdered, and shaved. Look at the woebegone walk of him. Eaten a bad egg, poached eyes on ghost. I have a pain. Great man's brother, his brother's brother. He'd look nice on the city charger, dropped into the DBC, probably for his coffee. Plays chess there. His brother used men as pawns, let them all go to pot, afraid to pass a remark on him. Freeze them up with that eye of his. That's the fascination, the name. All a bit touched. Mad Fanny and his other sister, Miss Dickinson, driving about with scarlet harness, bolt upright like Surgeon McArdle. Still, David Shee beat him for South Meath. Apply for the Chiltern Hundreds, and retire into public life. The Patriots' Banquet, eating orange peels in the park. Simon Daedalus said when they put him in Parliament that Parnell would come back from the grave and lead him out of the House of Commons by the arm. Of the two-headed octopus, one of whose heads is the head upon which the ends of the world have forgotten to come, while the other speaks with a Scotch accent, the tentacles. They passed from behind Mr. Bloom along the curbstone, beard and bicycle, young woman. And there he is, too. Now that's really a coincidence. Second time. Coming events cast their shadows before, with the approval of the eminent poet, Mr. G.O. Russell. That might be Lizzie Twigg with him. A.E. What does that mean? Initials, perhaps. Albert Edward, Arthur Edmund, Alphonsus Ed L. Esquire. What was he saying? The ends of the world with a Scotch accent. Tentacles, octopus, something occult, symbolism, holding forth. She's taking it all in, not saying a word, to aid a gentleman in literary work. His eyes followed the high figure in homespun, beard and bicycle, a listening woman at his side, coming from the vegetarian. Only wegabobbles and fruit. Don't eat a beef steak. If you do, the eyes of that cow will pursue you through all eternity. They say it's healthier, wind and watery though. Tried it. Keep you on the run all day. Bad as a bloater. Dreams all night. Why did they call that thing they gave me nut steak? Nutarians, fruitarians. To give you the idea you're eating rump steak. Absurd. Salty too. They cook in soda, keeping you sitting by the tap all night. Her stockings are loose over her ankles. I detest that. So tasteless. Those literary, ethereal people they all are. Dreamy, cloudy, symbolistic, aesthetes they are. I wouldn't be surprised if it was that kind of food you see produces the like waves of the brain, the poetical. For example, one of those policemen sweating Irish stew into their shirts. You couldn't squeeze a line of poetry out of them. Don't know what poetry is, even. Must be in a certain mood. The dreamy, cloudy gull waves o'er the waters dull. He crossed at Nassau Street corner and stood before thee. Windows of Yeats and Son pricing the field glasses, or will I? Drop into old Harris's and have a chat with young Sinclair? Well-mannered fellow, probably at his lunch, must get. Those old glasses of mine set right, Gore's lenses, 6 guineas. Germans making their way everywhere, sell on easy terms. To capture trade, undercutting, might chance on a pair in. The railway, lost property office, astonishing the things people leave behind them in trains and cloakrooms. What do they be? Thinking about. Women too, incredible. Last year traveling. To Ennis had to pick up that father's daughter's ba and hand it to her at Limerick Junction. Unclaimed money too. There's a little watch up on the roof of the bank to test those glasses by. His lids came down the lower rims of his irides. Can't see it. If you imagine it's there, you can almost see it, but can't see it. He faced about and standing between the awnings, held out his right hand at arm's length toward the sun. Wanted to try that often. Yes, completely. The tip of his little finger blotted out the sun's disk. Must be the focus where the rays cross. If I had black glasses. Interesting. There was a lot of talk about those sunspots when we were in Lombard Street West. Looking up from the back garden. Terrific explosions they are. There will be a total eclipse this year. Autumn sometime. Now that I come to think of it, that ball falls at Greenwich time. It's the clock is worked by an electric wire from Dunsink. Must go out there some first Saturday of the month. If I could get an introduction to Professor Jolly, or learn up something from his family, that would do too. Man always feels complimented. Flattery where least expected. Nobleman proud to be descended from some king's mistress, his foremother, laid on with a trowel, cap in hand goes through the land. Not go in and blurt out what you know you're not to? What's parallax? Show this gentleman the door. Ah, his hand fell to his side again. Never know anything about that. Waste of time. Gas balls spinning about, crossing each other, passing. Same old ding-dong always. Gas, then solid, then whirled, then cold, then dead shell drifting around, frozen rock, like that pineapple rock. The moon. Must be a new moon out, she said. I believe there is. He went on by La May Sinclair. Wait, the full moon was the night we were Sunday. Fortnight exactly. There is a new moon. Walking down by the Tolka, not bad for a Fairview moon. She was humming. The young May moon, she's beaming. Love. He, other side of her, elbow arm. He, glowworm's lamp, is gleaming. Love, touch, fingers, asking. Answer, yes. Stop. If it was, it was. Must. Mr. Bloom, quick breathing, slowly are walking past Adam Court. With a keep quiet relief, his eyes took note. This is the street here, middle of the day of Bob Doran's bottle shoulders. On his annual bend, McCoy said. They drink in order to say or do something, or chasser la femme. Up in the coombe with chummies and streetwalkers, and then the rest of the year sober as a judge. Yes, thought so. Sloping into the Empire, gone. Plain soda would do him good. Where Pat Kinsella had his harp theater before Whitbread ran the Queens. Broth of a boy. Dion Bukakalt, business. With his harvest moon face in a pokey bonnet. 3 purty maids from school. How time flies, eh? Showing long, red pantaloons under his skirts. Drinkers, drinking. Laughed, spluttering their drink against their breath. More power, Pat. Coarse red. Fun for drinkers, guffaw and smoke. Take off that white hat. His parboiled eyes. Where is he now? Beggar somewhere. The harp that once did starve us all. I was happier then. Or was that I? Or am I now I? 28 I was, she 23. When we left Lombard Street West, something changed. Could never like it again after Rudy. Can't bring back time. Like holding water in your hand. Would you go back to then? Just beginning then? Would you? Are you not happy in your home, you poor little naughty boy? Want to sew on buttons for me? I must answer. Write it in the library. Grafton Street gay with housed awnings lured his senses. Muslin prints, silk dames and dowagers, jingle of harnesses, hoofed hoods, low ringing in the baking causeway. Thick feet that woman has in the white stockings. Hope the rain mucks them up on her. Country bred chaw bacon. All the beef to the heels were in. Always gives a woman clumsy feet. Molly looks out a plum. He passed, dallying, the windows of Brown Thomas, silk mercers, cascades of ribbons, flimsy china silks. A tilted urn poured from its mouth a flood of blood-hued poplin, lustrous blood. The Huguenots brought that here. La Causa è Santa. Tara, tara. Great chorus that. Tari, tara. Must be washed in rainwater. Mayor beer, tara. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Pincushions. I'm a long time threatening to buy one, sticking them all over the place, needles in window curtains. He bared slightly his left forearm, scrape nearly gone. Not today, anyhow. Must go back for the lotion. For her birthday, perhaps. June, July, August, September 8th. Nearly 3 months off. Then she mightn't like it. Women don't pick up pens, say it cuts low. Gleaming silks, petticoats on slim brass rails, rays of flat silk stockings. Useless to go back. Had to be. Tell me all. High voices, sun-warmed silk, jingling harnesses, all for a woman, home and houses, silk webs, silver, rich fruits, spicy from Jaffa, Agendath, Netaim, wealth of the world. A warm human plumpness settled down on his brain yielded. Perfume of embraces all him assailed. With hungered flesh obscurely, he mutely craved to adore. Duke Street, here we are. Must eat. The Burton, feel better then. He turned Conbridge's corner, still pursued, jingling hoofed huds, perfumed bodies, warm, full. All kissed, yielded, in deep summer fields, tangled pressed grass and trickling hallways of tenements, along sofas, creaking beds. Jack, love, darling, kiss me, Reggie, my boy, love. His heart astir, he pushed in the door of the Burton restaurant. Stink gripped his trembling breath, pungent meat juice, slush of greens. See the animals feed. Men, perched on high stools by the bar, hats shoved back at the tables, calling for more bread, no charge, swilling, wolfing gobfuls of sloppy food, their eyes bulging, wiping wetted mustaches. A pallid, sweat-faced young man polished his tumbler knife, fork, and spoon with his napkin. New set of microbes. A man with an infant sauce-stained napkin tucked round him shoveled gurgling soup down his gullet. A man spitting back on his plate, half-masticated gristle, gums, no teeth to chew it, chump chop from the grill, bolting to get it over. Sad boozer's eyes, bitten off more than he can chew. Am I like that? See ourselves as others see us. Hungry man is an angry man, working tooth and jaw. Don't, oh, a bone, the last pagan king of Ireland Cormac in the school poem choked himself at Sletty southward of the Boyne. Wonder what he was eating. Something galoptious? St. Patrick converted him to Christianity. Couldn't swallow it all, however. Roast beef and cabbage, one stew. Smells of men, his gorge rose, spat and sawdust, Swedish, warmish cigarette smoke, reek of plug, spilt beer, men's beery piss, the stale of ferment. Couldn't eat a morsel here. Fellow sharpening knife and fork to eat all before him. Old chap picking his toodles. Slight spasm, full, chewing the cud, before and after. Grace after meals, looked on this picture, then on that. Scoffing up stew gravy with sopping sippets of bread. Lick it off the plate, man. Get out of this. He gazed round the stooled and tabled eaters, tightening the wings of his nose. 2 stouts here, 1 corned and cabbage. That fellow ramming a knife full of cabbage down as if his life depended on it. Good stroke. Give me the fidgets to look, safer to eat from his 3 hands. Tear it limb from limb, second nature to him. Born with a silver knife in his mouth. That's witty, I think. Or no, silver means born rich. Born with a knife, but then the illusion is lost. An ill-girt server gathered sticky, clattering plates, rocked the head bailiff, standing at the bar, blew the foamy crown from his tankard. Well up, it splashed yellow near his boot. A diner, knife and fork upright, elbows on table, ready for a second helping, stared towards the food lifter, across his stained square of newspaper. Other chap telling him something with his mouth full, sympathetic listener, table talk. I munched hum and the unchter bunk and munchte? Huh? Did you, Faith? Mr. Bloom raised his 2 fingers doubtfully to his lips. His eyes said, Not here, don't seen him. Out, I hate dirty eaters. He backed towards the door. Get a light snack and Davy Burns. Stopgap, keep me going. Had a good breakfast. Roast and mashed here. Pint of stout. Every fellow for his own, tooth and nail, gulp, grub, gulp, gob stuff. He came out into clear air and turned back towards Grafton Street. Eat or be eaten. Kill, kill. Suppose that communal kitchen years to come, perhaps. All trotting down with porringers and tommy cans to be filled. Devour contents in the street. John Howard Parnell. Example, the provost of Trinity. Every mother's son, don't talk of your provost, and provost of Trinity women and children. Cabmen, priests, parsons, field marshals, archbishops. From Aylesbury Road, Clyde Road, artisans' dwellings. North Dublin Union, Lord Mayor in his gingerbread coach, old queen in a bath chair. My plate's empty. After you with our incorporated drinking cup, like Sir Philip Crampton's fountain. Rub off the microbes with your handkerchief. Next chap rubs on a new batch with his. Father O'Flynn would make hares of 'em all. Have rows all the same, all for number 1. Children fighting for the scrapings of the pot, want a soup pot as big as the Phoenix Park, harpooning flitches and hindquarters out of it. Hate people all round you. City, arms, hotel, table d'hôte, she called it. Soup, joint and sweet. Never know whose thoughts you're chewing. Then who'd wash up all the plates and forks? Might be all feeding on tabloids that time, teeth getting worse and worse. After all, there's a lot in that vegetarian fine flavor of things from the earth. Garlic, of course, it stinks after Italian organ grinders, crisp of onions, mushrooms, truffles. Pain to the animal, too, pluck and draw fowl. Wretched brutes there at the cattle market, waiting for the poleaxe to split their skulls open. Moo, poor trembling calves. Meh, staggering bob, bubble and squeak, butcher's buckets, wobbly lights. Give us that brisket off the hook, plump, raw head and bloody bones. Flayed, glass-eyed sheep hung from their haunches, sheep snouts, bloody papered, sniveling nose jam on sawdust. Top and lashes going out. Don't maul them pieces, young one. Hot fresh blood they prescribe for decline, blood always needed. Insidious, lick it up, smoking hot, thick, sugary, famished ghosts. Ah, I'm hungry. He entered David Burns' Moral Pub. He doesn't chat, stands a drink now and then, but in leap year once in 4, cashed a check for me once. What will I take now? He drew his watch. Let me see now. Shandygaff? Hello, Bloom, Nosy Flynn said from his nook. Hello, Flynn. How's things? Tip-top. Let me see. I'll take a glass of burgundy, and, let me see. Sardines on the shelves. Almost taste them by looking. Sandwich? Ham and his descendants, mustard and bread there. Potted meats. What is home without Plumtree's potted meat? Incomplete. What a stupid ad. Under the obituary notices they stuck it, all up a Plumtree. Dignam's potted meat. Cannibals would with lemon and rice. White missionary too salty, like pickled pork. Except the chief consumes the parts of honor. Ought to be tough from exercise, his wives in a row to watch the effect. There was a right royal old nigger who ate or something the somethings of the Reverend Mr. McTrigger. With it an abode of bliss, Lord knows what concoction, calls moldy tripes, windpipes, faked and minced up, puzzle find the meat, kosher, no meat and milk together, hygiene that was they call now. Yom Kippur, fast spring cleaning of inside, peace and war depend on some fellow's digestion, religions, Christmas turkeys and geese, slaughter of innocents, eat, drink and be merry. The casual ward's full after, heads bandaged, cheese digest all but itself, mighty cheese. Have you a cheese sandwich? Yes, sir. Like a few olives too, if they had them, Italian I prefer. Good glass of burgundy, take away that, lubricate. A nice salad, cool as a cucumber, Tom Kernan can dress. Puts gusto into it, pure olive oil. Millie served me that cutlet with a sprig of parsley. Take 1 Spanish onion, God-made food, the devil, the cooks, deviled crab. Wife well? Quite well, thanks. A cheese sandwich then. Gorgonzola, have you? Yes, sir. Nosy Flynn sipped his grog. Doing any singing those times? Look at his mouth. Could whistle in his own ear, flap ears to match. Music, knows as much about it as my coachman. Still better tell him, does no harm, free ad. She's engaged for a big tour into this month. You may have heard, perhaps? No. Oh, that's the style. Who's getting it up? The curate served. How much is that? 7D, sir. Thank you. Mr. Bloom cut his sandwich into tender strips. Mr. McTrigger, easier than the dreamy, creamy stuff, his 500 wives had the time of their lives. Mustard, sir? Thank you. He studded under each lifted stripe yellow blobs. Their lives, I have it. It grew bigger and bigger and bigger. Getting it up, he said. Well, it's like a company idea, you see, part shares and part profits. Aye, now I remember, Nosy Flynn said, putting his hand in his pocket to scratch his groin. Who is this was telling me? Isn't Blazes Boylan mixed up in it? A warm shock of air, heat of mustard, haunched on Mr. Bloom's heart. He raised his eyes and met the stare of a bilious clock. 2. Pub clock 5 minutes fast. Time going in, hands moving. 2, not yet. His midriff yearned then upward, sank within him, yearned more longingly. Wine. He smell-sipped the cordial juice and bidding his throat strongly to speed it, set his wine-glass delicately down. Yes, he said, he's the organizer, in point of fact. No fear, no brains. Nosy Flynn snuffled and scratched, Flea having a good square meal. He had a good slice of luck, Jack Mooney was telling me, over that boxing match. Myler Kyo won again, that soldier in the Portobello barracks. By God, he had the little kipper down in the country Carlo, he was telling me. Hope that dewdrop doesn't come down into his glass. No, snuffled it up. For near a month, man, before it came off. Sucking duck eggs, by God, till further orders. Keep him off the booze, see? Oh, by God, Blazes is a hairy chap. Davy Byrne came forward from the hind bar in tuck-stitched shirt sleeves, cleaning his lips with 2 wipes of his napkin, herring's blush, whose smile upon each feature plays with such and such replete, too much fat on the parsnips. And here's himself and pepper on him, Nosey Flynn said. Can you give us a good one for the gold cup? I'm off that, Mr. Flynn, Davy Byrne answered. I never put anything on a horse. You're right there, Nosey Flynn said. Mr. Bloom ate his strips of sandwich, fresh, clean bread, with relish of disgust pungent mustard. The feedy savor of green cheese, sips of his wine soothed his palate. Not logwood, that. Taste fuller this weather, with the chill off. Nice quiet bar, nice piece of wood in that counter, nicely planed. Like the way it curves there. I wouldn't do anything at all in that line, Davy Byrne said. It ruined many a man, the same horses. Ventnor's sweepstakes, license for the sale of beer, wine, and spirits for consumption on the premises. Heads I win, tails you lose. True for you, Nosey Flynn said. Unless you're in the know, there's no straight sport going now. Linehan gets some good ones. He's giving Scepter today. Zinfandel's the favorite. Lord Howard de Walden's won at Epsom. Morny Cannon is riding him. I could have got 7-1 against Saint Amant a fortnight before. That's so, Davy Byrne said. He went towards the window and, taking up the petty cash book, scanned its pages. I could, faith, Nosey Flynn said, snuffling. That was a rare bit of horseflesh. St. Frusquin was her sire. She won in a thunderstorm, Rothschild's filly, with wadding in her ears, blue jacket and yellow cap. Bad luck to Big Ben Dollard and his John O'Gaunt. He put me off it, aye. He drank resignedly from his tumbler, running his fingers down the flutes. Aye, he said, sighing. Mr. Bloom, champing, standing, looked upon his sigh. Nosy numbskull, will I tell him that horse Linehan? He knows already, better let him forget. Go and lose more, foolin' his money. Dewdrop coming down again, cold nose he'd have kissin' a woman. Still they might like, prickly beards they like, dogs' cold noses. Old Mrs. Riordan, with the rumbling stomachs, Skye Terrier, and the City Arms Hotel. Molly fondling him in her lap. Oh, the big doggy bow-wowsy wowsy. Wine soaked and softened, rolled pith of bread, mustard, a moment mawkish cheese. Nice wine it is. Taste it better because I'm not thirsty. Bath, of course, does that. Just a bite or two. Then about 6 o'clock I can. 6. Time will be gone then. She. Mild fire of wine kindled his veins. I want that badly. Felt so off color. His eyes unhungrily saw shelves of tins, sardines, gaudy lobster's claws. All the odd things people pick up for food. Out of shells, periwinkles with a pen, off trees, snails out of the ground the French eat, out of the sea with bait on a hook. Silly fish learn nothing in 1,000 years. If you didn't know, risky putting anything into your mouth. Poisonous berries, Johnny Maggeries, roundness you think good. Gaudy color warns you off. One fellow told another and so on. Tried on the dog first, led on by the smell or the look. Tempting fruit, ice cones, cream, instinct. Orange groves, for instance, need artificial irrigation. Bleibtreustrasse. Yes, but what about oysters? Unsightly, like a clot of phlegm. Filthy shells. Devil to open 'em, too. Who found them out? Garbage, sewage they feed on. Fizz and Red Bank oysters. Effect on the sexual. Aphrodise. He was in the Red Bank this morning. Was he oysters, old fish at table? Perhaps. He young flesh in bed, no June. Has no R, no oysters. But there are people like things high. Tainted game, jugged hair. First catch your hair. Chinese eating eggs, 50 years old, blue and green again. Dinner of 30 courses. Each dish harmless, might mix inside. Idea for a poison mystery. That Archduke Leopold. Was it no, yes, or was it Otto, one of those Hadbergs? Or who was it used to eat the scruff off his own head? Cheapest lunch in town. Of course, aristocrats, then the others copy to be in the fashion. Millie too, rock oil and flour. Raw pastry, I like myself. Half the catch of oysters they throw back on the sea to keep up the price. Cheap no one would buy. Caviar, do the grand. Hawk in green glasses, swell blowout, lady this, powder bosom pearls. The elite, creme de la creme. They want special dishes to pretend they're. Hermit with a platter of pulse, keep down the stings of the flesh. Know me, come eat with me. Royal sturgeon, high sheriff, Coffee, the butcher, right to venisons of the forest from his ex. Send him back the half of a cow. Spread I saw down in the master of the rolls kitchen area. White-hatted chef like a rabbi. Combustible duck. Curly cabbage à la douche de pomme. Just as well to write it on the bill of fare so you know what you've eaten. Too many drugs spoil the broth. I know it myself, dosing it with Edward's desiccated soup. Geese stuffed silly for them, lobsters boiled alive. Do take some ptarmigan. Wouldn't mind being a waiter in a swell hotel, tips, evening dress, half-naked ladies. May I tempt you a little? More filet, lemon sole, Miss Dubedat? Yes, Dubedat. And she did bedad. Huguenot name, I expect that. A Miss Dubedat lived in Killiney. I remember. Du de la, French. Still, it's the same fish, perhaps. Old Mickey Hanlon of Moore Street ripped the guts out of making money. Hand over fist, finger in fish's gills. Can't write his name on a check. Think he was painting the landscape with his mouth twisted. Moi kill, I ate ha ignorant, as a kish of brogues, worth 50,000 pounds. Stuck on the pane, 2 flies buzzed, stuck. Glowing wine on his palate lingered, swallowed. Crushing in the wine press grapes of Burgundy. Sun's heat it is. Seems to a secret touch telling me memory. Touched his sense, moistened, remembered. Hidden under wild ferns, on Howth below us, bay sleeping. Sky, no sound. The sky. The bay purple by the lion's head. Green by Drumlick. Yellow-green towards Sutton. Fields of undersea, the lines faint brown in grass. Buried cities. Pillowed on my coat, she had her hair. Earwigs in the heather scrub. My hand under her nape. You'll toss me all. Oh, wonder, cool soft with ointments her hand touched me, caressed. Her eyes upon me did not turn away. Ravished over her I lay. Full lips, full open, kissed her mouth. Yum. Softly, she gave me in my mouth the seed cake, warm and chewed. Mawkish pulp her mouth had mumbled, sweet sour of her spittle. Joy, I ate it, joy. Young life, her lips that gave me pouting. Soft, warm, sticky, gum jelly lips. Flowers her eyes were, take me, willing eyes. Pebbles fell, she lay still. A goat, no one. High on Ben Howth, rhododendrons, a nanny goat walking sure-footed, dropping currants. Screened under ferns, she laughed, warm-folded. Wildly I lay on her, kissed her. Eyes, her lips, her stretched neck beating. Woman's breasts full in her blouse of nun's veilings, fat nipples upright. Hot, I tongued her. She kissed me. I was kissed. All yielding, she tossed my hair. Kissed, she kissed me. Me and me now. Stuck, the flies buzzed. His downcast eyes followed the silent veining of the oaken slab. Beauty, it curves. Curves are beauty. Shapely goddesses, Venus, Juno, curves the world admires. Can see them library museums standing in the round hall, naked goddesses, aids to digestion. They don't care what man looks, all to see, never speaking. I mean to say to fellows like Flynn. Suppose she did Pygmalion and Galatea. What would she say first? Mortal, put you in your proper place, quaffing nectar at mess with God's golden dishes, all ambrosial. Not like a Tanner lunch we have, boiled mutton, carrots and turnips, bottle of Alsop. Nectar, imagine it drinking electricity, God's food. Lovely forms of women, sculpted Junonian, immortal lovely. And we stuffing food in one hole and out behind. Food, child, blood, dung, earth, food. Have to feed it like stoking an engine. They have no, never looked. I'll look today. Keeper won't see. Bend down, let something drop if she see. Dribbling a quiet message from his bladder, came to go. To do, not to do, there to do. A man, and ready he drained his glass to the lees and walked. To men too they gave themselves, manly conscious, lay with men lovers. A youth enjoyed her to the yard. When the sound of his boots had ceased, Davy Burns said from his book, "What is this he is? Isn't he in the insurance line?" "He's out of that long ago," Nosey Flynn said. "He does canvassing for the Freeman." "I know him well to see," Davy Burns said. "Is he in trouble?" "Trouble?" Nosey Flynn said. "Not that I heard of. Why?" "I noticed he was in mourning." "Was he?" Nosey Flynn said. "So he was, faith. I asked him how was all at home. You're right, by God, so he was. I never broached the subject, Davy Burns said humanely. If I see a gentleman is in trouble that way, it only brings it up fresh in their minds. It's not the wife, anyhow, Nosey Flynn said. I met him the day before yesterday, and he, coming out of that Irish farm, dairy. John Wise Nolan's wife has in Henry Street with a jar of cream in his hand, taking it home to his better half. She's well nourished, I tell you. Plovers on toast. And is he doing for the freeman? Davy Burns said. Nosey Flynn pursed his lips. He doesn't buy cream on the ads he picks up. You can make bacon of that. How so? Davy Burns asked, coming from his book. Nosey Flynn made swift passes in the air with juggling fingers. He winked. He's in the craft, he said. Do you tell me so? Davy Burns said. Very much so, Nosey Flynn said. Ancient, free, and accepted order. He's an excellent brother. Light, life, and love, by God. They give him a leg up. I was told that by well, I won't say who. Is that a fact? Oh, it's a fine order, Nosey Flynn said. They stick to you when you're down. I know a fellow was trying to get into it, but they're as close as damn it. By God, they did right to keep the women out of it. Davy Byrne smiled, yawned, nodded, all in one. Yeah. There was one woman, Nosey Flynn said, hid herself in a clock to find out what they do be doing. But be damned, they smelt her out and swore in on a spot, a master mason. That was one of the St. Ledgers of Doneraile. Davy Byrne, sated after his yawn, said with tear-washed eyes, And is that a fact? Decent, quiet man he is. I often saw him in here, and I never once saw him, over the line. God Almighty couldn't make him drunk, Nosey Flynn said firmly. Slips off when the fun gets too hot. Didn't you see him look at his watch? Ah, you weren't there. If you ask him to have a drink, first thing he does, he outs with the watch to see what he ought to imbibe. Declare to God, he does. There are some like that, Davy Burns said. He's a safe man, I'd say. He's not too bad, Nosey Flynn said, snuffling it up. He's been known to put his hand down to help a fellow, too. Give the devil his due. Oh, Bloom has his good points, but there's one thing he'll never do. His hand scrawled a dry pen signature beside his grog. I know, Davy Burns said. Nothing in black and white, Nosey Flynn said. Paddy and Leonard and Bantam Lyons came in. Tom Rockford followed, frowning, a plaining hand on his claret waistcoat. Day, Mr. Byrne? Day, gentlemen. They paused at the counter. Who's standing? Paddy Leonard asked. I'm sitting anyhow, Nosey Flynn answered. Well, what'll it be? Paddy Leonard asked. I'll take a stone ginger, Bantam Lyons said. How much? Paddy Leonard cried. Since when, for God's sakes? What's yours, Tom? How's the main drainage? Nosey Flynn asked, sipping. For answer, Tom Rochford pressed his hand to his breastbone and hiccuped. Would I trouble you for a glass of fresh water, Mr. Byrne? He said. Certainly, sir. Paddy Leonard closed his ailments. Lord love a duck, he said. Look at what I'm standing. Drinks, too. Cold water and ginger pop. Two fellows that would suck whiskey off a sore leg. He has some bloody horse up his sleeve for the gold cup. A dead snip. Zinfandel, is it? Nosey Flynn asked. Tom Rochford spilt powder from a twisted paper into the water set before him. That cursed dyspepsia, he said before drinking. Bread soda is very good, Davy Burns said. Tom Rochford nodded and drank. Is it Zinfandel? Say nothing, Bantam Lyons winked. I'm going to plunge 5 bob on my own. Tell us if you're worth your salt and be damned to you, Paddy Leonard said. Who gave it to you? Mr. Bloom, on his way out, raised 3 fingers in greeting. So long, Nosey Flynn said. The others turned. That's the man now that gave it to me, Bantam Lyons whispered. Pff, Paddy Leonard said with scorn. Mr. Burns, sir, we'll take 2 of your small Jamesons after that, and a stone ginger, Davy Byrne added civilly. Aye, Paddy Leonard said, a sucking bottle for the baby. Mr. Bloom walked towards Dawson Street, his tongue brushing his teeth smooth. Something green it would have to be, spinach, say. Then with those Rontgen rays searchlight you could. At Duke Lane, a ravenous terrier choked up a sick, knuckly cud on the cobblestones and laid it with new zest. Surfeit returned with thanks, having fully digested the contents. First sweet, then savory, Mr. Bloom coasted warily. Ruminants, his second course. Their upper jaw they move. Wonder if Tom Rochford will do anything with that invention of his. Wasting time explaining it to Flynn's mouth. Lean people, long mouths, ought to be a hall or a place where inventors go in and invent free. Course then you'd have all the cranks pestering. He hummed, prolonging in solemn echo the closes of the bars. Don Giovanni a Cenarteco, mi invitasti. Feel better. Burgundy. Good pick-me-up. Who distilled first? Some chap in the blues, Dutch courage? That Kilkenny people in the National Library, now I must. Bare clean clothes tools waiting in the window of William Miller. Plumber, turn back his thoughts. They could, and watch it all the way down, swallow a pen sometimes, come out of the ribs years after. Tour around the body, changing biliary duct, spleen squirting, liver gastric juice, coils of intestines like pipes. But the poor buffer would have to stand all the time with his insides, entrails on show. Science. A Cinerteco. What does teco mean? Tonight, perhaps? Don Giovanni, thou hast me invited to come to supper tonight. The rum-dum. Doesn't go properly. Keys. 2 months if I get to Nanetti. 2. That'll be £2.10. About £2.08. 3 Hines owes me. 2.11. Prescott's Dye Works van over there. If I get Billy Prescott's ad, 2.15. 5 guineas about, on the pig's back. Could buy one of those silk petticoats from Molly. Color of her new garters. Today. Not think. Toward the south, then. What about English watering places? Brighton, Margate, piers by moonlight. Her voice floating out. Those lovely seaside girls. Against John Long's, a drowsing loafer lounged in heavy thought, gnawing a crusted knuckle. Handyman wants job, small wages, will eat anything. Mr. Bloom turned at Gray's confectioner's window of unbought tarts and passed the Reverend Thomas Connellan's bookstore. Why I left the Church of Rome? Bird's nest. Women run him. They say they used to give pauper children soup to change to Protestants in the time of the potato blight. Society over the way Papa went to for the conversation of poor Jews, same bait. Why we left the Church of Rome. A blind stripling stood tapping the curbstone with his slender cane. No tram in sight, wants to cross. Do you want to cross? Mr. Bloom asked. The blind stripling did not answer. His wall face frowned weakly. He moved his head uncertainly. You're in Dawson Street, Mr. Bloom said. Molesworth Street is opposite. Do you want to cross? There's nothing in the way. The cane moved out trembling to the left. Mr. Bloom's eye followed its line and saw again the Dye Works van drawn up before Drago's. Where I saw his brillantined hair just when I was. Horse drooping, driver in Jong lawns, slaking his drought. There's a van there, Mr. Bloom said, but it's not moving. I'll see you across. Do you want to go to Molesworth Street? Yes, the stripling answered. South Frederick Street. Come, Mr. Bloom said. He touched the thin elbow gently.